at a very, very high price for Chicago police officers and their families. As you all might know, 2 Chicago police officers and a U.S. Marshal was shot within 96 hours in 3 separate brazen attacks against law enforcement and society. So far this year, 25 Chicago police officers have been shot at or shot. That's 25. 5 of these brave men and women have been struck by gunfire. So of that 25 shot at, 5 have been struck by gunfire. Despite the dangers to themselves, our officers have not shied away from stepping up to protect this city. Earlier today, hundreds of officers from across the city gathered at the University of Chicago Medical Center to salute our officer who was injured in a shooting in Inglewood on Wednesday. That's the first officer that was wounded on Wednesday. Thankfully, she has been released from the hospital as she continues to recover. Less than 24 hours before she was released, another Chicago police officer was shot and seriously wounded by yet another violent criminal with a gun. That officer was rushed to the very same hospital where some of the best doctors and nurses in the world worked feverishly to stop the bleeding. To them, I say thank you very much for your medical expertise in rendering that service to our officers. Please, please pray for both our officers as they continue to recover from their injuries and for their families as well. The Chicago Police Department is vigilant and will keep working. Every day, officers dedicate themselves to ensuring visibility, engagement, and collaboration, working side by side with the Community Safety Coordination Center and many other city departments and community partners. As we collaborate, we also work with our local and federal law enforcement partners on task forces and investigative missions. Our department is laser focused on getting rid of guns and gangs, enhancing public safety, on transit, and deterring our carjackings. As we continue to work to take guns off our streets, we are hosting a gun turn-in event on Saturday, June 11th, at St. Sabina Church from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. That's Saturday, June 11th, at St. Sabina Church from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. There will be no questions asked to turn in your gun. And the most important thing is these weapons are being taken off the street. You can receive up to $100 for a gun. Finally, before I go into some notable arrests and then take questions, I just want to say our police officers won't stop holding violent offenders accountable. And we won't stop working in the community to build bridges and grow trust as we work together, all of us together, to make Chicago safer. I'll run through some notable arrests we've made over this past week. For murder and attempt murder, 23-year-old Omar Sosa was arrested on May 29, 2022 and charged with 3 felony counts of attempted first-degree murder, 1 felony count of aggravated battery with a discharge of a firearm, and 1 felony count of aggravated battery with a discharge of a firearm at an occupied vehicle. Sosa was arrested after being identified as the offender who shot and seriously injured a 22-year-old female and shot at 2 23-year-old male victims in the 4500 block of West Chicago Avenue in the 11th District on April 30th, 2022. Another notable arrest, 56-year-old Thaddeus Wilson was arrested on May 31st, 2022 and charged with 1 felony count of attempted first-degree murder. He was arrested after being identified as the offender who shot and seriously injured a 33-year-old male victim in the 7100 block of South Parnell Avenue in the 7th District on May 30th, 2022. Another notable arrest, 42-year-old Gregory Bell was arrested on May 29th, 2022 and charged with 1 felony count of aggravated battery using a deadly weapon, 1 felony count of attempted first-degree murder, and 1 felony count of aggravated battery causing great bodily harm. Bell was arrested after being identified as the offender who moments earlier stabbed and seriously injured a 56-year-old in the 100 block of West Randolph in the 1st District on May 29th. 18-year-old Humberto Ramos was arrested on May 30th, 2022, and charged with one felony count of attempted first-degree murder and one felony count of aggravated battery with the discharge of a firearm to an occupied vehicle. Ramos was arrested after being identified as the offender who shot a 57-year-old male victim in the 3000 block of South Keeler in the 10th District. We have an additional robbery arrest. A 17-year-old was arrested for robbery on May 31st and charged. He was arrested after being identified as the offender who robbed and battered a 25-year-old male on the public transit system. With that, I'll take a few questions. Yes.
Thank you, Tom. Charlie Wojciechowski, NBC5, Chicago. Superintendent, you went through a couple of rather disturbing statistics. The number of assault weapons being taken off the street and the apparent willingness of offenders to open fire on police officers. Describe for me your concerns given those two increasingly dangerous situations.
You know, we repeatedly talk about the dangers of the job, but as we continue to recover more and more record levels of gun recoveries that Chicago police officers, there's not been a generation of Chicago's cops ever that's recovered this many guns in this period of time. These last 2.5 years now almost recovered 11,400 guns in 2020, covered over 12,000 guns in 2021, and we're on pace to recover similar numbers this year without having a gun turning at this point in the year, which we usually have some gun turnings to add to those numbers. It really highlights the dangers of the job, and it also highlights the gun violence epidemic our country is in, particularly when we're all listening for our leaders in Congress to come up with some sensible gun laws in addition to what we have now that will stem the tide. But in the interim, our cops have been putting their lives on the line, and their families have been impacted in ways that hard to describe. The look in families' eyes when they show up to the hospital, not knowing whether their loved one is going to survive, and just the outrage at they're just doing their job. I heard repeatedly from families, they're just doing their job. Why would a person want to kill him? That's from the families I'm hearing, and just the concern and the pause they have that is this job really worth it? But day after day after day, they show up to work and risk everything for all of our safety, everything, selfless service. I mean, it's beyond bravery and courage. Yes. I don't know if you had a follow-up, Charlie, to that or not.
I did. I'd like to see an assault weapon.
I think any sensible person would say yes. I'm no politician, but I think any sensible person would say yes. Of the polls I've seen, most Americans say yes. What it will take for Congress to say yes is my best guess, your best guess. Who knows what it will take? How many more children in schools? How many more police officers? How many more acts of senseless mass shootings? I don't know what will get a yes in Congress, but my hopes and prayers are that we get a yes this time.
Superintendent John Garcia with Channel 7. Going from guns to a different kind of weapon, there have been a number of robbery incidents with a suspect using a machete. Any indication at this point that those are related, and is there any other insight you can give us on that?
The fact that the common weapon is a machete is a common denominator. We likely are related. We don't have an offender in custody yet, but I will tell you we're expending all of our resources to capture this person as soon as possible. Obviously, we're concerned that every resident is that this violent person is using a weapon like a machete. But we at this point don't have an offender in custody, but we are working. We're adding resources to the area where this is happening. We did that overnight, and we're going to add even more resources until this person is brought into custody. Any more questions? Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.